No, go.
This is your life, Maurice Kenny.
Here we are today in Dartry Park. Give Rabbi Kenny the Spanish Inquisition. Over to Margot.
Moments with Maurice, part 2.
Does that mean two?
Yeah,
For the benefit of those who don't understand French.
just in case. So, Sunday the 19th of March, 2017. Maurice, interrogation part 2.
Yeah.
Tell us, where was your granny from? What was her name and where was she from?
My grandmother was Sarah Jane Mars, and they came from County Carlow, and they worked in the Coolatin estate in County Carlow, which was in turn owned by the Fitzwilliam estate in Yorkshire in England. And my grandmother's family originally came from Sheffield, and so they worked in the Fitzwilliam estate, and then they transferred from the Fitzwilliam estate in Yorkshire over to the Coolatin estate in County Carlow. My grandfather was a gardener in the Coolatin estate, and that's where they met.
Oh.
So, and then they were Protestants. The Mars were Protestants. What? Protestants, and they. And there was no such thing as a Catholic marrying a Protestant in those days, so they had to actually leave town. She was actually pregnant at the time, and they came to Rathfarnham.
Married.
Unmarried, yeah. They got married afterwards in Rathfarnham Church.
In the Catholic one or the Protestant one?
In the Catholic Church, yeah. In Rathfarnham, yeah. So it wasn't. I mean, there was no way they could actually stay in Carlow, and they came from the Crab Lane in Tullow, County Carlow, quite near where Gavin lives. So, I said originally they had come from Sheffield, and they were blacksmiths, and they worked for the Fitzwilliam estate in Yorkshire, and that's where my grandfather met my grandmother. He was 5 years older than she, and he was born in 1865, and she was born in 1870. Yeah. Yeah. So then
they got together. They were.
She was actually very frugal, because they were able to. They worked in this. They got this shop. My grandfather worked for the Brooks family in Rathfarnham as a gardener, and then she ran this little shop, and they were able to. She kept on saving money, etc. And all the money that she saved, then they moved to Taryn, and they continued doing that. And then she kept on saving money. Like we went to live with my grandmother and grandfather, and but she was so frugal. She'd be saying, "Switch off the lights here, switch off the lights there. You're putting too much butter on your bread."
Stop eating toast at 10 o'clock at night.
and that's the way she was. But they were able to actually buy the farms without any borrowings.
Wow.
Yeah, because she was so frugal. She was
Good
just
savers.
They're good savers and all that type of stuff. Yeah. So.
Do you pick up any saving skills from them?
No.
And tell us, what was our granny like when you were growing up? So what was Granny Kenny like as a woman?
Yeah, well, I mean, she was very tall individual, and she was quite bossy, and she was, I suppose, in a way the whole place revolved around her more than anything else. But my grandfather couldn't actually milk a cow yet. He had 100 cows, and so many horses and milkmen and all that type of stuff. So we used to have about 10 horses at the time on the farm. We had a bull. The bull that we had came from the Brooks family in Rathfarnham where my grandfather used to work, because he actually killed a man on Harold's Cross Bridge. And because he killed somebody, they wanted to get rid of him, and he took that bull, and we had a bull house, special bull house built for him. I remember that.
Was it ever a threat that if you were bold you'd go into the bull house?
No, we weren't that cruel. No.
Not like you and Mum were to us.
No. There was. They were very serious about health because there was an industry. That's all they did was work. They didn't do anything else except work.
And was the Brooks estate, was that Marley Park, was it? Around that neck?
No, do you know where Rathfarnham Bridge is?
Yes.
What it was?
Yeah.
Well, there was the River Dodder came down,
Yeah.
went underneath that bridge. So their land was along the river bank and straight. If you know when you're going up towards the garage, you know the garage up in Rathfarnham.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it stretched from the bridge up to Rathfarnham.
There was a big old house in there on the right hand side.
That was Brooke Thomas' house. That's where they lived.
They were looking to do the builders, I presume.
Yeah, same family.
Is it? Oh,
Yeah.
very good.
I remember as a kid that because we used to before we actually before they bought land in Tala, they used to rent that property, and they used to. I remember the Brooks used to come up in their Bentley to that big house, chauffeur-driven Bentley. But my grandfather, because of my grandmother's connections, my grandfather was able to get a lot of favouritism from both banks and because of the Protestant connection from the banks and to enable them to start building their farms, etc. Which was more than most people could do then. So that's where that was her. Yeah, she was well able to swear at the same time. But she used to have these strange sayings, like, one of them was, castles falling and dung heaps rising, which was even so people who didn't have money then got money, and then people who had money lost it, and they came to whatever. But she had all these funny sayings, and the worst swearing would be if they said, blackguard or bastard would probably be the worst thing she'd come out with, and but she was well able to swear when she wanted to. Again, she never drank in her life. And my grandfather used to go up to the pub every night with all his pals from around Terranure. Like there was the next door neighbour there was the Roaches, which was the barbers. They used to come in and shave him when he was blind. Because they used to come in those cutthroat things and shave him every couple of days. Mm-hmm. And so there was Tommy Delaney, which was the shoe cobblers from just one of the shops down from Merlson's Bookies. And so there was a crowd of them. Stephen's Keogh, he was a cattle dealer. He used to live down there as well. And then the Gallaghers owned another dairy farm. They all used to go to the pub every night, every single night, and have so many drinks and go home. But that was there.
What
Yeah.
did he drink? Because he didn't drink, did he?
Who?
You're saying that he didn't drink?
Oh no, the grandfather always drank. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, he used to drink whiskey.
It was your
And
dad.
every night before he went. My dad never drank.
Yeah.
But my grandfather, before he went to bed, always had a punch, a glass of punch. And
Mainly spirits. Was
Eh?
it? Mainly spirits he drank, was it?
punch is hot
Punching.
water and sugar with whiskey. That's all it is, just hot water, whiskey and sugar. And then he would have a big glass then to go to bed. He went to bed at 9 o'clock every night. He was, he I suppose he had all the vision of what he wanted to do, and all the sons mainly did the work, kept it all going type of thing, Because my dad, my father William Kenny, he was born in 1912, but he was working on the farm from the time he was about 14, doing everything else. And then you had my dad's brother, his uncle was called James Kenny, and he was in the Troubles in the 1916 Rising when Ireland became a republic, or not started the process of in a republic, because they had gone into, at the age of something like, I think he was 14 years of age, and my Uncle Jim actually went into the revolution in 1916 Rising in the GPO, and they didn't have any money, and they were in the bus on the way in. Himself and his other brother, Paddy, they were going into the Revolution, and the bus conductor came along and asked them for the bus fare, and they said, no, we don't have bus fare. So I said, well, get off the bus. But we're going to the Revolution, they said, you know. I said, I don't care, get off the bus, and give him a slap across the head and chuck them off the bus. So they had to walk in to town, go into the GPO where the revolution was in progress. And they were captured eventually by the British, who came up the Liffey with the big gunships, etc., and they captured everybody. And they were brought back to England and put in prison for 2 years. But the people of Dublin, when they were being taken down to these big ships, you know, prison ships going back to the UK, the people of Dublin all lined up as they were walking the four abreast down to the ships, and they kicked them and spat them all the way down to the ships. They subsequently were brought over to prison in England, in various different prisons. And then when they came back 2 years later, they were heroes, and they couldn't understand the whole thing, because they couldn't understand in the first place that the people of Dublin would kick them and spit on them and all the rest of them. And then they couldn't understand either when they came back that they were actually heroes type of thing. So my Uncle Jim, he became in special branch, and because he was a big De Valera supporter.
Try to keep your hands down from your mouth.
Oh, sorry, Cameron.
It's just, I'm thinking about the way that's pointed up, and
Yeah.
you're just, like this sometimes,
Have you got a little screen that you can see?
Okay.
It's on,
Yeah.
Leave him go.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So your uncle was in special branch?
Yeah, he was in special branch in the police. Yeah, and because all the followers always got plummy jobs, and he used to guard for most of his life. He used to guard the GPO, where they used to broadcast, where Radio Ireland was actually broadcasting from. And because he was special branch, he was armed, just in case anybody came in to try something. He would be there with his gun, type of thing. That's all he did all his life. But yeah, he was a tough man as well. But for some reason, he fell out with my grandfather, and they never had words, never spoke.
What did
I
they
don't
fall
know
out
what-
over?
I have no idea. And nobody could tell us what it was. Never found out. There was some issue then between them, but they never spoke to each other. Yeah, but yeah, that was my Uncle Jim. And then my Uncle Paddy, he had a farm up in a place called Woodbine, which is just above Rockbrook. You know where Rockbrook is. My Aunt Moll lived up near Rockbrook. My Uncle Sonny had a farm, a Ballycraft farm. And they all had farms. My Uncle Jack, he had a dairy in Blackrock, and all my first cousins all went to Blackrock College. And they all played on the first rugby team. They were very good at rugby. But there was my Uncle Jack, who had a dairy farm over in Blackrock and Booterstown. And so they all, that's what they were all, a dairy type of stuff, And so when I grew up, I joined an advertising agency, Janus Advertising in Parnell Square, and I worked in that for about 3-4 years.
Was that your first job?
It was my first job, yeah.
When did you sell Bibles?
When did I sell Bibles? What did I say to you?
It's a no.
We'll cut that out. We want to just get that story on tape from earlier. Dad, tell us, what were you like as a kid?
Well, I mean, we were sent to college, the college, and because we were sent to college, everybody else used to go to the national school, so we've seen as somebody, college boys, there was different classes of people, and we were seen as college boys, so we used to get ragged from the ones that didn't go to college as being college boys, we used to resent, we wished we were one of them, and they wished they could be one of us type of thing. And so that's the way it was. But Terranure was a rugby school, and we always, a great adversity was with Blackrock College. And they were sort of very good at rugby, and they dominated the rugby. But we used to meet them in the finals almost every other year type of thing, both in the junior cup team and the senior cup team. But when I left there and I joined get me going now about the selling Bibles. While I
You
was
can just tell us the year.
while I was waiting to get into the advertising
6 month
agency,
gig.
I had to get a job to make some money, because there was no free money then, you know, and like your parents wouldn't give you money to just to hang out type of thing. But so I saw this advertisement for engineering manuals for selling an engineering and there was a paid while training was outlined in the advertisement, and I went down to this company called, I think it was Caxton, and they you know, they said we're selling, we train you to sell engineering manuals and things like that, sell them to garages and all that type of stuff, and then paid whilst training. And we said, well, okay, we just work for a first week and then we get paid and then we buzz off type of thing. And then the first week said, no, you don't get any money this week, you get it next week. You have to wait till next week. And so next week came along and they said, oh, you don't get any money, you know. But in the meantime, they were saying, oh, this is a very good seller, just to let you know that these Bibles that we sell make very good commission on them and people want to buy them. So if you sell one of these, you get a lot of commission. So we had to train then on how to sell Bibles. And so we used to, and then after we said, well, that's all very fine. We'd get the money at the end of the 2 weeks training or whatever it was, and then we'd skittle off. But then they said, no, you don't get that. You don't get that. We'll pay your expenses. We're going to send you to Limerick to sell Bibles. And then, you know, we'll pay your expenses. So, you know, that's the way it worked out. And I did that for 6 months. And, do you know, Len also, as if strangely, he sold Bibles as well.
Lenny.
Two birds of a feather.
Yeah. And he did an encyclopedia for Caxton's door to door. So we had this somewhat similar with backgrounds in that respect. He went to Wesley and went to Terry Muir. But yeah, and then the advertising agency called me and I left the publishing company and went to work in Janus Advertising. And then I used to have to go to college to do marketing, media marketing and all that type of stuff, both during the day and the evenings, and get a diploma in advertising and marketing.
And did you finish to get your qualification?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I decided to that I wanted to become a film director, funny enough. And so I one of the guys in the advertising agency, a guy called Victor Conroy, said, well, if you're going to do that, I have a very good contact in London who'd be able to sort you out. So he said his name is John Davis, and I said, oh, fine. And so he said, I'll give you his telephone number, and then when you get there, you just got to ring him and he'll sort you out. So what happened was that he gave me the number, and I was in London and sorted when my uncle had a flat in Kensington, so he gave me the use of the flat. So I didn't have to look for accommodation or anything. And I lived in number 3 Cave Place on the Fulham Road, Southwest 6. And the following morning, which was a Monday morning, I rang this guy, John Davis, at his office, and I was put straight through to him. And he was, he said, I announced myself, you know, and he said, so what can I do for you, you know? And I said, well, John, we had this thing in Ireland where it was like a mid-Atlantic culture where you didn't, in England, everybody would Mr. Whatever, Mr. Bloggs or Mr. Kenny or whatever. Unless you went to school with the individual, you wouldn't address him in any other way except Mr. But we in Ireland had this thing where we had mid-Atlantic culture where you're on first name terms with everybody. Didn't go down what you were, you were sort of first name terms, you know. So this fellow was, so he said to me, which I didn't know from Adam, but I had a sort of a mental, known the guy Victor Conroy, who used to work in the agency. I had this mental picture already of him and where he worked, the type of thing. And I saw him as a theatrical agent who would interview young starlets type of thing, you know, worked out of a basement. That's what I mentally saw of this individual. So when I was speaking to this fellow, John Davis, he said, can you come in and see? I said, what can I do for you? And I said, well, I do want to become a film director. And he says, oh, do you now, really? Yeah. I said, yeah, John, of course. So he says, well, you know how much a film director earns? And I was actually, when I was in Dublin in the advertising agency, I was earning £7.50 a week. So he said, so do you know how much a film director would earn? And I said, not really, John, you know. And he said, well, a film director earns 40 grand a year, could you manage on that? And I was so naive, I was saying, yes, John, of course I could. And I'd say, what about an assistant director, you know? And he'd be on 35 grand a year, could you manage on that? And of course, no problem, John. And he went right down through the things of an assistant, of a trainee. And then he said, can you come and see me then? Come in and see me. So I said, well, okay, that's fine, John. Give us your address and all the rest. And he said, come into Golders Square in London, get the tube in and come and see me. And he gave me the address and everything like that. So when I got off the tube and I came out, and I was looking around, it was all skyscrapers, and there weren't any basements in which I mentally saw them, as they were all just skyscrapers. I went to the address, and each had, anyway, I ended up in his office, which was in a tall building, a skyscraper type thing. And when I went to reception and I was ushered in, well, you could say, I'm here to see John Davis, blah, blah, blah. So I was eventually ushered into this huge, big boardroom with carpets like up to your knees, and a sort of big, massive boardroom table, and then there was a desk in the corner, and he was sitting behind this desk. So when I got there, you know, I was nice to meet you, John, blah, 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 you know. And his secretary had come in with a big bunch of files, and she was actually getting him to sign off these various different files. And eventually she said to him, you know, she said, will there be anything else, Sir John? And the guy who was calling John all the time was Sir John Davis, chairman of the Rank organisation, who never heard of Victor Conroy. Victor Conroy got his name from Who's Who, you know, the man who was the big spot. And he gave it to me, and of course I just took it and ran with it, you know. But he never admitted that he didn't know him. He just actually, he probably was amused by the whole thing. So he said, are you actually in the union by any chance? And then I couldn't know what to say, because it wasn't in our vocabulary to address anybody as sir. There was a particularly English thing. You couldn't say, you know, so I couldn't actually call him, so I didn't know what to do. And I was hoping that the ground would open up and swallow me, you know. So he said, I said, well, I'm not in a union because there isn't any unions in advertising agencies. And then he said, oh, well, I'll tell you what I'll do. He said, what I need you to do, he says, you need to get into some form of film management thing or whatever. He says, I have contacts in the ABC cinema. And he says, if you join the ABC cinema as a trainee manager, you will then become an assistant manager, and then you will become a relief manager going around London, South London or whatever, doing reliefs, and then once you're a relief manager, you can join the union, and then I can transfer you from that union across to the union that you want to be in. So I couldn't say.
The battery's gone.
That was
Yeah,